What is up, friend? Hector here, StrongAsHeck.com, with this week's Movement Monday for the week. We're going to be closing out the crab series. Part 1, we went over basically making contact hand to foot, really stimulating that proprioceptive portion of our movement, of our 3 movement systems. And then in part 2, we went over like a tabletop, really focusing, getting the shoulders, the elbows, and the wrists involved, and actually also opening up the hips by driving up from the tabletop. Today we're going to be finishing with, this is going to challenge the hips a little bit. And again, a lot of this stuff comes from the movement system, ground force method by Peter Lakatosh. So we're going to be in crab. And from there, we're going to transition to like a squat, what we would call frog in the GFM system. And it's pretty fun. And this is actually one of the movements in one of our tests to assess movement. Okay, so a couple of things you'll be looking for during this little transition, or what we would call a crossroad, is hip mobility. Okay, hip mobility, we want to be able to try to keep the legs, I guess, kind of straight as we're transitioning from crab to frog, frog to crab, and we're going to be working on both sides. So we get to assess both sides of hip mobility. All right. So obviously we're going to start here in crab. Okay, both feet on the ground and hips are up. Remember not to let the neck fall into the shoulders, right? Keep the chest up. For less stress on the shoulders and the wrists, your fingers will be pointed out. To intensify that, if you do have good mobility, you'll turn the fingers face back, okay? So I'm going to do fingers straight out because I just finished doing Jiu-Jitsu. I ended up going with a lot of the big guys, and one of them popped my elbow pretty good. I wasn't caught in a submission, but he was attempting to sweep on me. So I was in the half guard. This has nothing to do with the Movement Monday, by the way. But I was in half guard and I was working on passing, and I was like posting out like so, and he reached under and tried to pull my arm, and his arm came right behind my elbow, and it was like an arm bar, and it kind of popped my elbow. So for today, I'm listening to my body. A lot of times when I get injured, I still try to push through it, even though I tell my students, don't push through it, rest, recover. So today I'm gonna take some of my own advice. My fingers will be turned out for this one, okay? Because this turning the fingers back really hits that elbow, and my elbows kind of suck after 18 years of jiu-jitsu. So chest stays up, okay? Fingers are out, so I feel really comfortable right here, okay? From here, find a good position with your hips. Now you're going to begin to walk yourself forward, okay? And then you're going to transition to frog, okay? Pretty much like a squat position, okay? So from here, try to keep your chest up, okay? You can use your elbows to keep your knees out. That way your knees don't collapse in. And let's say your hips are tight and your knees are wanting to cave in this way, okay? Use your elbows and you can push out like this, okay? Like, I don't know, maybe like a praying squat or something like that, okay? So I'm using my elbows to keep my knees out, tracking what my 3rd and 4th toe, okay? At no point do I want my knees kind of caving in like this, okay? That really kind of tweaks my hip a little bit. So use the elbows, keep here, okay? One thing you can do, if you're in this position and you feel like you're going to fall backwards, you can use a kettlebell, okay? This is kind of where the goblet squat comes into play. You can use the kettlebell to give you that counterbalance, okay, to allow you to keep your chest up and rest your hips between your feet. Cool? So from here, I'm going to transition back to crab. So from here, I'm going to reach back around. Now, as I do this, you want to assess the mobility of your hips. Can you keep your hips square as you reach back to place your hand on the ground to start to return to crab? Does your hip kind of turn like this because it's kind of tight here on the outside? Does it turn in because you can't maintain your knees out? So just make that notation, okay? You may have great hip mobility as you shift back on this side, but as you come around to this side, maybe this leg kind of starts to collapse in, okay? And then back. If you find that as you sit back, you kind of fall on your butt, make an assessment both sides. You may fall on your butt. that just means you're not able to get your hips low enough to reach your hand back. So I'm gonna turn sideways for this. Maybe your hips are really high just because your hips are kind of tight, okay? Maybe your hips are really high because your hips are tight. So if you reach back, you can't really grab the ground. The more you're able to sit your butt down between your feet, it's going to be an easy transition as you go back to the crab, okay? So how can you, I guess, regress that? You would basically kind of bring one leg down almost to like a figure 4 lunge. So if you're here, if you're in frog, and you're trying to work your way back, one thing you can do is put your hands on the ground, bring your leg down like this, okay? Reach back, bring your leg back up, and come here. And then to come back around, walk yourself up, here. And just kind of keep progressing through that. Literally get your reps in, work through those movements going from crab, frog, frog to crab. This is a really fun little drill, and this really works those hips, which is actually the next series in the Movement Monday. We're going to really work the hips, we're going to work the groin and the hamstrings. We're going to work that whole hip musculature. So I'm really excited for that next series next month. So crab, chest stays up, okay? We're not sinking in, right? Chest stays up, walk yourself in with your fingertips. Then from here, bring your hands forward. Try to keep the knees out. If your knees collapse, use your elbows to keep the knees open, okay? Then you're going to transition back to the ground. Try to keep your knees open. Come back to crab. And then you're going to transition back again, okay? Here, 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 here. Cool? Wow, that was a big stretch in my hips. If you're a BJJ guy, if you're a grappler, or if you're just, anybody really, period, you don't have to be some kind of athlete, you need to have that freedom in your hips. That way you don't have things like low back pain. Having that freedom in the hips, I wouldn't know what it's like to not have it, because I've always been, I guess, kind of flexible, just because I've kept up with a lot of this stuff. A lot of it thankful to Jiu-Jitsu. But I've heard from people that lack that hip mobility, and then they regain that hip mobility, that appreciation for that freedom in the hips is it's pretty powerful. So this is really going to challenge those hips. Next week, in the 3 weeks following that, we're going to be breaking into, or diving into, or whatever you want to call it, into an actual hip series. And I'm going to show you how to work on really mobilizing the hips to make every part of your day even better. Obviously, your kettlebell training, your get-ups, deadlifts, all that's going to get better with it, but just the quality of your life is going to improve. So if you have any questions, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe. Check out my other videos in the Movement Monday series. Share this on Facebook or whatever. You recommend so many other things throughout the world, throughout the day, right? Food, restaurants. Recommend this to somebody else that you know may be struggling with some like hip mobility problems. So give that a try. Let me know how it goes. Again, Hector with StrongAsHeck.com with this week's Movement Monday for the week.